Thank you so much for clicking on my video. And wow, what a move out of Tesla. We were talking about this early on last week. So let's play around with this later on in the video. But I just want you to know that this is happening right now with Tesla, and your stock could be next with some big events going on this week and going into next week. So we have to do some technical analysis for the SPY Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, NVDA, AMD, and Meta going forward. Let's get right into it. All right, we're going to look at a lot of these on the shorter time frames, maybe the bigger ones for Tesla and a couple others. But for now, with the SPY here, we do have that range for you tomorrow, a little bit to the downside. Okay, so this just shifted down just a little bit from today, 514.56 to the upside, and we have 510 flat to the downside. So this would be where we want to pay attention because we have a 68% chance to land in that zone. So if we get outside of it pretty quick, look for that to land back in this zone. Okay. Now, as we look at the signals from today, we paid attention to this wedging that was happening. We come up into this resistance up in here, and we see something very, very telling. We see a 15-minute divergence, and it's very, very steep, very close to negative territory now. So we do have that opportunity as of tomorrow on the 15-minute chart to start some kind of negative trend. Okay, so we want to pay attention if this is actually able to remain down there, or if this is just some kind of pullback, gets outside of this early and crosses back up. Good chance that we're going to test this liquidity up in here. So if this does want to roll over pretty quick and then turn back up, we actually could see another push higher, maybe testing this high, making another one. If we dip to lower levels though, like this, then we could see this turn around and use this as resistance. So you can use these levels, these daily risk ranges, as resistance when you do break through them, and as support if you break through to the top side. But for now, if we do see this direction turn down, if we see this really want to get into negative territory, really depends if we're able to sell off and hold at higher levels, meaning hold up above most likely this daily expected move. But if we actually come below that pretty steep, we could use that as resistance and see this trend line broken, see this wedge start to break. I'm not necessarily leaning towards that. I think we are going to maybe even see one more hit fire move to get some kind of double top, or even some kind of move a tiny bit higher before the week is over. That way, when Jerome Powell talks, maybe he'll be asked a question that actually turns around this market when he talks about how the FOMC sees inflation moving forward, being that they feel that they're not in control anymore. And then switching over to the Qs, we do see that new daily range, 446.79 to the upside, 441.03 to the downside. We've really been landing in these daily zones for a long time now, so I am expecting if, like, sometime this week we're going to see something a little bit crazier. Don't necessarily know what that would be right now. Now you'll notice there, you might think, hey, this is divergence here, but actually this is not divergence, right? We're coming down a little bit with this, still in some sort of flagging at this point. But we can see that start to escalate as we did just lose these shorter time frame moving averages. Now, the thing here that you can pay attention to is the SPY made that move higher. The Qs did not confirm that move. The Qs really getting pulled down by Tesla, Apple, and even Google as of today. So we're going to go through a bunch of those in a moment. But looking at this, you just want to say, hey, there is a difference here between the SPY and the Qs. That's a hint for me. That SPY trade was actually a very good one. Now we can see what the downside is. If this downside wants to hold up around that daily range, somewhere around this high, I would really say it maybe has a shot to go a little bit higher. But if we start to dip to lower levels, okay, so extremely lower levels in one day, meaning coming all the way down to here, yes, you do have that weekly right here, but you do have that opportunity now to create some kind of right shoulder, getting some kind of lower high. So if you want this to head higher, really want that to react somewhere around this high right up in here, get outside of that early on in the day, and then you have that 68% chance to land back in this zone. Really just paying attention to this MACD. If it's able to remain in negative territory and cross over one more time, meaning it comes down, right? So meaning it comes down pretty good, comes down pretty strong, then we see that come down again. Maybe we see a divergence here. There'll be a little pop like this for some kind of right shoulder to set up. That would be a bearish case. The bullish case would be that this is going to be short-lived. We're going to react from somewhere around this daily expected move, see this curl back up in positive territory, maybe paying attention to, say, a 30-minute, right? So if this 30 minutes able to turn back around pretty quick, not going to see much of a sell-off here, then I would say, hey, there's probably one more move left in this right before Jerome Powell talks, and then we'll have to see what the momentum looks like, because if the momentum is dying out right before Jerome Powell talks and they ask the right questions, we could be getting some very bad news this week, and that's something that Tesla's already happening. So Tesla and Apple really not getting the best news right now, and that's causing them to sell off early, and if Apple's not participating in all of this, then I would really have my red flag waving pretty high. Now, Apple, from a 15-minute perspective, we actually watched this live this morning and it gapped down. Where did it see some kind of buying back up? Right at the bottom of our range. It struggled to break through that for a little bit, but then boom, it breaks through. And we see that come down to lower levels. We see that slight divergence forming on the RSI, but not on the MACD at the same time. So this could be one of those scenarios where we push through a zone. This is the very important zone we've been talking about. And then we see that reaction back into this zone to then grab some more liquidity to head lower. Okay, so a lot of the time Apple does like to burst past a zone, use it as resistance, and then go a little bit lower. Now, if we were to rebuild from here, we would say, hey, here's your cup. Maybe this is your handle, and we're actually going to go fill this gap. By the time the week is over, the only problem is you're still in a negative trend overall. So all we have to do is follow this MACD. If it's not able to get into positive territory, good shot. We're going to test this low, maybe even come make a new one. That's where I'll be paying attention to those weekly expected moves. So if we do get some kind of bounce here with the 30-minute crossing, I would really look for this to turn back down. So if we see some positivity, look for that to roll back over, because if this rolls over in negative territory, it's not going to be good news for Apple, and you might be seeing even lower prices. Not good news coming out for Apple today. Amazon is one that we will pay attention to on the 2-hour scale here, and that's just because we have triple divergence. We have a bunch of divergences all across here. You still have that divergence between these two highs here. You have that divergence between this high here. These two highs here, you both have divergence with the current price action. So if this wants to actually turn over, you have a good probability that this is actually going to go down into negative territory. So how could this look if it to the bear side, if this is going to break down? Well, we could break down to something like, 172, get some kind of bounce up like this, get that head and shoulders going. We kind of talked about this live, and then use that liquidity up in here to then head lower, creating a bigger head and shoulders in the grand scheme of things down in this area. Maybe we get that big head and shoulders across the board over here. So we actually do see a pretty good way down, but we'll have to look at this in real time because we've seen a lot of fake outs in this market. So if I look at a 30-minute or something like that, you're going to see that we're dipping down, but we're not in negative territory yet. We're still holding at pretty high levels. So even if this wanted to sell off a little bit, I just don't think you want to react all the way down to something like 172.50. If you want this to turn around again, I really think you want to react off of this liquidity right up in here, see that turn back around, seeing this MACD cross in positive territory. If that happens, good shot, we're going to test the high. Good shot, we're actually going to make a new one. So we still do have some positive outlooks. It's just a time where you're seeing all the momentum die out, and we do have some big news this week. And you do have things like Tesla, which we're about to go over, that are looking very, very weak at this moment. Now, Tesla, if you were part of the Patreon, I should put a thumbs up on here and a pat on the back, because we were talking about this area up here last week in our Patreon only video, our members video for Patreon. If you want to join, the link's down in the description. We give out one video that is not seen on YouTube every single week. So, when you do become a member, you do get that video every single week, and we will be putting out a monthly expected move video. Once we see those monthlies getting tagged and we see some trade setups, that's when I'll put out the monthly video. Right now, we're doing one video a week to cover these weekly ranges where we go through them and find some trade setups. Now, this would be the trade setup that we actually pointed out last week, which was you have divergence right here, and actually on a 15-minute, you got triple divergence across. We said this could be some kind of triple top. Watch out below if this wants to break down. Yeah, it could go fill this gap first, but our overall assessment here was, hey, we're going to see a reaction maybe a little bit up and then see that tear down. Guess what? We didn't get the reaction up. We just started tearing down. So if you did find this, you see that divergence here on the MACD on the 30-minute. This MACD right here, but this was able to turn over the 2-hour. Okay, so the 2-hour, you'll notice it crossed up in here. We actually had divergence on the 2-hour at the same time. One of the signals that I really enjoy. So you should really join that Patreon so we can talk about these things throughout the week before it's actually happening. We talked about the levels up here. We saw that drop off. The next thing we said was if it breaks through here, it's going to be very bad news. And guess what? It broke through there. Very bad news. It didn't want to extend out for quite some time like we were talking about, really just broke through, and that was your big warning sign there. Now, if we want to see some kind of reaction, we can get some kind of reaction, but you'll notice how far the 30-minute is into negative territory. So if we do even get some kind of positive move up like this, that could be a retest, and then we roll back down and actually take out this low and head towards that 180.92. So at this point, the last thing you really want to pay attention to here is, sure, you can get that upward move. Pay attention to the MACD, see if that's able to cross down into negative territory again. Good shot, you're heading a little bit lower, maybe to test this low down here. The other thing I'd point out is this is your main signal here, the daily. If this rolls over, then some extreme pain is coming, and most likely Tesla is heading towards something like 154.78. So if this is able to cross, you'll notice it's in negative territory. That means we're most likely going to test this low or go make a new one. And I have that point down here at 154.78 marked off. NVIDIA seeing another positive day. The thing with this, able to hold above 850. Good news for now, but is that some kind of trap? We got some wicking at the end of today outside of the Bollinger Band. We could at least come reconnect with the 9 before we head higher. Maybe even we want to reconnect with the 20 to head higher. We like to reconnect with that a lot of the time, right? And then one time we actually reconnected with the 20 here. So pay attention to this level right here. It's going to be pretty important. I would mainly look at this liquidity in here and say, hey, this point of 772 looks decent. And if we lose that, then I'd be saying, hey, maybe we're going to go fill this gap pretty quick. Okay, so you do have that divergence, not necessarily on the MACD anymore, but it is on the RSI as of right now. Hasn't turned over. You really need this to turn over to tell you that that has confirmed as divergence on the RSI. Okay, so really want to pay attention to this going forward. If I pull up a 2-hour here, we're just going to see we would look like we would maybe have some divergence up here, but that's only on the MACD and it's just flatness, okay? And it's not on the RSI at the same time. So if we do get a pullback as far as tomorrow goes, I would be leaning more towards some kind of pullback, not an overall crashing down unless we get some kind of news, okay? So really want to pay attention. You do have this 30-minute divergence on the MACD, but you do not have it on the RSI at the same time, kind of like the 2-hour. So what I can do is I can watch this MACD, see if it's able to roll up one more time in positive territory. If this gets a good beat down and then wants to roll back up, good shot that we're going to test this high again, okay? That 850 level is very important, so I don't want to say, oh, it could make a new high. It can if it keeps squeezing, but right now, if we get some kind of dip down to lower prices, I'd look for something around that 850 price point for some kind of reaction on the 30-minute here. So if this wants to pull down to lower levels, look for some kind of reaction here. Now that could set up some kind of right shoulder. We could get a faint little right shoulder if we don't see very much buying come in. But NVIDIA's had some good buying lately. I would just pay attention to this MACD, see if it's able to roll up one more time. Maybe a positive move is coming with that. But when you look at the daily scale, is this a good time to invest in NVIDIA? Hell no. AMD, very similar story. The only thing different with AMD, a little bit even weaker candle, a little bit more wicking here above that 200 price point we were talking about, going up to 210 or 211 here, wanting to leave back a few gaps. Okay, so we can come fill all of these gaps really soon. And the thing with NVIDIA the thing with AMD that's different from NVIDIA is this divergence on the daily is holding strong. So you do have that divergence on AMD right now on the daily scale. So if that wants to roll over the next week or two, that would be bad news for AMD. And going into a 30-minute, you'll just do a similar thing as NVIDIA. If this thing does start to see some selling off, you want that to be more controlled, a little bit sideways, kind of like there's some tapering, okay? Because if this just starts dropping, as we did kind of just stair step our way higher with no real selling in this move, we actually could be in for an elevator move down, and that would be very worrisome going into the rest of this week, especially since, you know, we've gotten some bad news already on Monday. If we start to get bad news on Tuesday, be very hopeful that Jerome Powell gives us some good news on Wednesday for some kind of bounce if you're bullish. Meta getting a little bit of a double top up here on the 30-minute. Something that I've been paying attention to is this 2-hour. You notice that we still have these divergences across the board. Sure, this one kind of got knocked out, but we noticed that on the RSI, we actually do have this flatness of the MACD right across here, but we still have that divergence over here. And if I pull up a 4-hour, there's divergence on there as well, but we don't need to do that right now. So really what I'm paying attention to on Meta, because you do have those weekly ranges up for Meta, 521.09 to the upside, 483.95 to the downside, really looking for some kind of reaction out of Meta. I think we're going to get a good reaction, possibly to the downside very soon with this kind of MACD behavior. If this is able to get into negative territory, we could actually come down to here by, Thursday or something like that, and then see some kind of bounce to get back in this zone because we close in there 68% of the time. And then maybe that's just a dead cat bounce to give us some kind of head and shoulders up in this area. So that's really what I'm paying attention to on Meta. This hasn't confirmed or anything like that, but once it does, if it's able to get into negative territory, we can see this ripped away very fast. Just a note, if we do see dramatic selling soon, make sure to pay attention to these weekly ranges. If you're not able to buy back up into it, if we then use it as resistance, we can see one of those crazy times where the selling just piles on over time. I'm not leaning towards that right now. We'll look at the structure if we do get out of here, but that is something that you just need to be aware of at these prices. One thing that a lot of people in the live video were talking about was Google. So we're just going to talk about it real quick, right? We were overall stating, hey, this would be bad news if we take out this level here. We got that bad news, got some consolidation. Now we don't want to take out this level right in here. Guess what? We gap just below that level, hold below. Now we're hitting the 200. Weren't able to close below it. So that's good news for Google. If we do get some kind of bounce out of this, look for that to react up into our recent trend line. Could just be getting some kind of dead cat bounce here to actually break through that 200. So we want to pay attention to those types of things. The 2 hour, not seeing any divergence. The 30-minute, not seeing any divergence down here. So Google is just ripping to the downside, and I'm not going to be catching a falling knife with this one anytime soon. If it starts to get a good reaction and then we see that flip to bullish, we can talk a little differently about it, but nothing about this is bullish. You are in a negative trend for a very long time here with little pops into positivity, right? But overall remaining in negative territory, which is very, very good news. So if you were trading this to the downside, you could almost treat this like a swing trade at this point. Look for that to build up towards that center line. Once you see that red bar come out, even taking a little bit of a risk here, maybe with this slight red bar, you can barely see it. There's a red bar right here. This bar right here was red. This would be where I would take possibly my short position below all the moving averages with the crossing of the MACD. Boom, we see that downward move. Now we're kind of just flagging out. We could see another downward move very soon. So paying attention to a lot of stuff, but I believe maybe 128 or something like that might be in Google's near future. The VIX, and we're just pulling this up, showing you that trend that just got broken. Yes, this trend between the most recent volatility has been broken to the upside. And we're able to remain at higher levels, actually not able to fill this gap just yet. So we could see some bullishness to fill that gap. We could see it to come down in here and fill this gap around 13. But right now you do have that divergence on the 2 hour. You have that at the same time on the MACD and RSI. So if this is able to get in actual positive territory, that's when we'll see that volatility really start to creep up, really start to extend. But as of right now, still in negative territory. If this wants, it could roll over one more time, fill both of these gaps, and then take off with some kind of retest. So really pay attention, but volatility is coming back into this market. It's starting to flatten out, which is a good sign that volatility is coming back in. And when two things like Apple and Tesla sell off that hard and we don't see any real spikes in volatility, only 2.74%, it tells you people might be rotating their money to NVDA, AMD, other stocks that are really blow off tops right now. And that bubble might be popping very, very soon as people are really piling into there. 2 days till I get my new camera, but the main takeaway here is your stock could be next. That's right. We have Apple really selling off, confirming on those monthly charts that we went over on the weekend. We have Tesla selling off one more time, not even trying to hold up in that consolidation at this point, not even trying to go fill that gap. So really, it just is a time to say, hey, if these two stocks are really, really struggling, what's down the pipeline for all the other stocks? And that's something you need to pay attention to because your stock could be next and volatility could be right around the corner with Jerome Powell talking on Wednesday and Thursday. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Joining the live video and all that good stuff. If you want to take my course, join the Patreon, or just donate to the channel, all those links are down there in the description. You guys know I appreciate it more than anything. But join me back in the morning for our stock market live show where we're going to be watching some stuff. And yes, we will be live for when Jerome Powell is talking this week. Okay, so we can watch that together. I hope you guys have all the luck in the world trading tomorrow, and I hope you have a great, great night. Peace.